So you want to get better at fighting in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and master Cloud's core combat systems. In this guide, we're going to show you how to destroy your enemies using him with various tips for his different moves, abilities, and combos. The first thing to know about Cloud is that his main role in combat is to be a close range damage dealer, and that his unique mechanic is the ability to switch between two different modes, the Operator mode and the Punisher mode. You'll start off in Operator mode, which is his more traditional combat method, and this does include a standard block and enhanced mobility. But for Punisher mode, this is more offensive focused with increased damage, faster ATB gain, and a parry that will have you feeling like a top tier player every time you pull it off. Let's go over each of these so you have a thorough understanding of how to play Cloud. In his Operator mode, you have a 5-hit basic combo by pressing the square button back to back. This 5-button combo string can be slowed down or cancelled out of by using a command, which is even easier if you have tied them to your shortcut menu. Holding down square in the Operator mode will have you do a wide slash AoE attack, which actually scoops up enemies around you and piles them up in front of you, which is great for then doing follow-up attacks and abilities. Cloud can also guard using the R1 button, which can be perfectly timed to nullify any incoming damage completely, and of course you have your dodge button using circle. The awesome thing about your dodge is that you get some new attacks after doing a dodge. If you press square repeatedly after dodging, you will send out several projectile blade beams. But alongside this, the aerial combat has been improved dramatically in Rebirth, and now after dodging and then holding down square, you can actually do a gap closer rush attack that will dash you to the enemy attacking them and put you airborne even if you look close to the ground. When you are airborne, you can use any of Cloud's abilities marked with this icon or do more basic attacks. You can also hold down square, which will result in a wide-hitting green beam attack, and if you do this after dodging while airborne, it will do a sparkle that will keep the enemies juggled. And then you have Cloud's Punisher mode, which has boosted damage, increased ATB gain on staggered enemies, but comes with less mobility as you move slower. With this, your basic attack combos turn into a near repeatable X combo that is great for building up ATB. You also have a 2-hit combo when you hold down square, and interestingly, this will apply the Berserker buff on yourself when the final hit connects, which will give you additional damage, but also cause you to take additional damage. One of the biggest draws of the Punisher mode is that you can parry incoming attacks, which is done in a couple of ways. You can just hold down R1 and wait for the attack to come your way. This will mean you receive some damage, but a perfectly timed R1 parry will do the same thing but nullify the damage completely. Alternatively, you can tap triangle to switch modes into Punisher mode, and this will cause Cloud to produce a white glowing effect, which if hit during this effect will initiate a parry, making it a very easy way to quickly activate a parry. On top of all of this, you can tap triangle again after being hit with a parry, and this will slide you behind the enemy. We do have some notes about the aerial combat though, and while you are airborne, you can repeatedly dodge to stay up in the air using a directional dodge. Alternatively, you can do a non-input dodge which will cause you to go back down to the ground. The new synergy skills have also been introduced into Rebirth, and Cloud has some really good options here. Bullet Batter with Barret is a 3-ranged combo attack that's great for building stagger. To do this, you hold down the block button R1 and then press the assigned button, which for us is square 3 times. This can also be done in the air. Furthermore, you can combo this attack by switching into the Punisher mode that has its own separate version of Bullet Batter. Or you can quickly tap square to repeat the triple shot instead. Next to this, you have Spellblade or Power Cleave, which is a very hard-hitting attack which does need to be charged but can be performed for free without using ATB, and it will actually give you a massive chunk of ATB for both characters involved if you pull this off. And then you have your defensive synergy skills like Counterfire, which will allow him to counter a ranged attack, which isn't usually possible with the Punisher mode parry. So those are the basic moves, and most of them can be cancelled out of and adapted for the scenario, so try different methods and combos for your playstyle and the enemy. Next up, we have all of Cloud's abilities, and a majority of them are actually pretty awesome. First is Focus Thrust. This is a lunge attack that goes towards the enemy with a piercing strike that hits multiple times. This move is going to be your go-to for using against pressured enemies, as it's amazing for pushing those pressured enemies into the staggered state very quickly. Then you have Braver, which will strike your foes with a mighty swing of your sword. This is an amazing attack for using against staggered enemies and actually actually becomes stronger if you're airborne, so get used to doing those aerial combos to get into the air and then use Braver to increase its potency. Triple Slash will slash up to 3 enemies in quick succession. By hitting multiple foes, it will increase its potency, and this will have you hone in on enemies, dashing over to them automatically, even airborne ones, and each strike can actually hit multiple enemies at once if they're grouped together. Firebolt Blade will imbue your sword with lightning and then fire damage while you slice the enemy. This can be used while airborne or to get into the airborne state, and it's one of our favourite new abilities for Cloud as it scoops up enemies into the air, causing 2 different types of elemental damage that does hit hard. A great tip is that you can use this to launch grounded enemies into the air. Cloud's Disorder ability delivers a devastating attack which switches him between his modes. It will fill your ATB gauge when the attack connects and can be used while airborne. This is an incredible skill when paired with the enemy skill Materia that comes with Plasma Discharge, as this will refill your ATB gauge when it connects, proccing a burst of lightning damage from Plasma Discharge that is just awesome. A quick note, if you use Disorder in Punisher mode, it will also pop you up into the air, so this is another way to get airborne. Then you have your Prime mode, which actually strengthens your Punisher mode. You can then hold down attack to do 3 consecutive strikes on the enemy, which also increases the Berserk potency. If you're using Punisher mode a lot, then you will probably want to use this, as it basically just enhances Punisher mode all around and actually changes the behavior of it. Here's a quick tip that if you're using Punisher mode, after you hit a parry, you can switch back to Operator mode, and this will pop you up into the air and allow you to slam back down or cancel out of it to go into aerial combos. Infinity Edge has a long wind-up but unleashes an overhead strike that deals massive damage, and it does increase damage on staggered enemies. It costs 2 ATB gauge and does have a very long wind-up, but the hit is very effective and you're mostly going to use it on staggered enemies anyway. To be honest, you will mostly be using Braver instead, as it's faster and you can do multiple of them, but this is very cool if you can get the hit off. Blade Burst will unleash a wave of non-elemental Mako energy in front of you at the enemy, and this is a nice option for a more ranged attack. Counter Stance will have you brace for an attack and then retaliate, and if you activate this at the right time, it will reduce the damage. So if one parry wasn't enough, you actually have 2, and this one gets pretty crazy as it was in the first remake and deals great damage and can be quickly cancelled into from most combos. The really cool thing is you can now use this while in the air for some extra spice. Then you have Aerial Onslaught, which is a deadly assault from above. This can only be used while in the air, but it is great as an aerial ender as it does tons of damage and just looks really cool. You can unlock this one from your folios once you get to a high enough level. Next, here are some suggestions for your equipment that you might want to consider adding to your core build. For Materia, the Precision Defense Materia will allow you to hit those parries and blocks even easier. The Elemental Materia will add extra elemental damage to your attack depending on what you slot in with it, and this is going to be very good for overall increasing your damage. Just remember to swap out the element based on what you're fighting. The Enemy Skill Materia will give you access to some amazing abilities like Plasma Discharge and Sonic Boom that gives you the Bravery Faith buff without using MP and deals some wind damage. For your weapon choice, as you play through the game, you should generally try out each new option as you find them, because they usually increase in damage as you find them and have new abilities on them to learn and permanently unlock. However, near the end of the game, certain weapon choices seem to shine because of their weapon skills. The Sleek Saber in our experience has the highest physical attack and decent magical attack due to it having double attack plus 20 weapon skills, as well as some nice ATB charge rate bonuses or an additional plus 20 magical attack. The Umbral Blade, however, has lower offensive stats but does juice up your defense by plus 50, your HP by plus 200, and has Reprieve on it, letting you survive lethal damage with 1 HP, making it a very good option for harder fights if you're struggling. Finally, the Rune Blade can reach the highest magical attack if you for some reason want to focus mostly on magic with Cloud. For accessories, the Champion's Belt really shines later in the game, which you get by completing the Gym Quest minigame. However, you will change this as you progress through to the end game for hard mode and VR missions. So hopefully now you have a better understanding of Cloud and how to use him in combat. Comment below any tips that you have and subscribe for more Final Fantasy VII Rebirth coming your way soon.